Now, the next thing we are going to learn a new concept which is called if underscore else within dplyr. Alright, so if previously we already understand, right, the concept of if else, if it meets a certain condition, then it will run or execute a certain things, and if it is meet another certain condition, it will execute another specific code block, right? So that was the concept of if else. Now we wanted to understand how can we utilizing if else in dplyr. Alright, the syntax is something like this. Is quite straightforward actually. So if underscore else, alright, all data stand for data frame. In this case, right, in this slide they are using all underscore data, but in our case we use flights based on our data in Google Colab, right? And then dollar signs over here, dollar signs, sorry, let me just like dollar signs over here, and quantity is basically the column name. In this case they are using quantity. In our case it can be anything. All right, and the condition is more or equivalent to 4, and if it is more or equivalent to 4, then it will execute this one. Sorry, it will execute this one, which is large. If it is not this more or equal to 4, which is less than 4, right, it's going to execute this small one. So that is how the syntax looks like. Now let's try to do in our data, which is this one, right? Okay, which is this one, right? So let's see how our data looks like first. All right, so I'll just like run head flight stand. Okay, all right, so in this case, right, most probably the things that we can do is we can make it something like this. All right, so for depth underscore delay here, let's make it if it is more than 10. If it is more than 10, then it's going to be very late, but if otherwise it's going to be not late. All right, so something like that, just like something simple I'm thinking, right? So how can we do this is maybe we can just like make one variable, which is a custom one. I'll just make label delay. All right, label delay is equivalent to if underscore else. All right, now again, the very first thing I said, what we need to put our data frame name. In this case our data frame name was, we are using flights, right? So flights, and then we wanted to find based on depth underscore delay, right? So we put dollar sign and we put depth underscore delay. Now we put the condition, which is if it is equivalent or more than 10, all right, or more than 10, then it's going to be what? The label is going to be what? The label is going to be very late. All right, or else it's going to be not late. All right, so this is our syntax, right? So if I run this one, it looks like nothing happened. Even if I run flights, right, if I look at head flights over here, we can see there is no new label underscore delay over here, right? Because yes, we don't really put this label underscore delay in these flights or data frame yet. We will and we can if we are using mutate, which we are going to learn after this. All right, now if you simply do like this, right, what happened is actually it's going to have this. If you print label underscore delay, right, it's going to have all of the label for the whole 534 rows. All right, so the very first one, the very first row is not late, the second one is very late, the third one is not late, the fourth one is very late. If you look at the data over here, right, maybe you can just like synchronize here. The condition is if it is more than 10 that or equals to 10, right, that is very late. So the first one is 4, right, so that's why it is not late. The second one is 70, that's why it is very late. The third one is -6, that's why it is not late. And the fourth one is 32, that's why it's not very late, and it goes on, right? So that is how we use if underscore else in dplyr. All right, so the syntax is quite straightforward. The very first one is we just use if else. Let me just like delete this one. We just use if underscore else. Second one is just we take the data frame, dollar sign, and the column name, and this is the condition more or equal to 4. And if it is more or equal to 4, if it is like based on the condition that we set, it's going to label large. If not, it's going to be labeled small. So it's kind of really straightforward, right? So that is how if underscore else work. All right, now the next thing is we are going to learn how can we create that label, right? We created the labels already. How can we put this label in our data frame? Because if you realize, after we do this thing, right, the label underscore delay, and if we look at our flights over here, we do not have any label underscore delay columns, right? And how can we add this label underscore delay in flights is basically we can use we can use something called mutate over here. So this mutate, right, we can just simply use this mutate over here. And how is it work is basically the first one is the data frame name, which is flights, and the second one is our label just now, which is called label underscore delay. All right, so if I run this one and I look at flights again right now, what happened is we are going to have one more new column over here, which is label underscore delay. And that is how the mutate work. The function of this mutate is basically we wanted to create a new columns over here. All right, so if we run this mutate, right, the size underscore data mutate, what we are going to have is we are going to have order size column. All right, so same goes to this one. We run this mutate, right, and what we are going to have is we are going to have label underscore delay in our flights data. That's why we have label underscore delay here. All right, so I think
this is, we have one more thing, which is supposedly about group underscore by, right? But I removed that slide into following week lecture because I think this have been too much for this week. So I think see you guys in the next video. Bye bye, all the best, thank you.